contract. It is a 4-year deal worth $150 million. That includes $100 million in total guarantees. The Saints have really been the leader throughout, the only team that tried to trade for him in really a perfect situation. Derek Carr is gonna love it there, and he's gonna get paid quite handsomely.
The very first domino in NFL free agency has officially fallen, although it's technically not the start of NFL free agency. Until the 15th, Derek Carr was a special and particular case. And this has a lot of ramifications for many teams in the NFL. So we're gonna take you through everything because I actually think the conclusion of this saga is, one, very validating, and two, kind of comical. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. I also wanted to take a moment to thank all of you guys that watch my content, all of the people that work with me to produce this content. I think we had the most successful day of my entire career on Saturday on both the flight mic and on microphone and on our TikTok pages and on our Instagram pages. So whether you're the person editing this video or you're the human being that's watching this video, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your support. Now that we get all that out of the way, work! So I've made almost $5,000 playing this game over the past couple months and posting my picks and selections onto my Instagram story for you guys to follow them. And the game that I'm obviously talking about is Prize Picks. Right now, when you use my promo code Mikerophone, they'll match up to $100 of your initial deposit with another $100. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, yesterday I had Killian Hayes getting less than 21 points, rebounds, and assists. You went into the third quarter with 18, and he finished the game with 20.5. I can't tell you how euphoric that feeling was when I saw that I was able to make $210 off of a pick that came within 0.5 of not hitting. So if you want to check out Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code Mikerophone for a free 100% deposit match up to $100. And follow me on Instagram if you want to follow my picks on Instagram. Mike check 1212. What's going on, everybody? The Derek Carr free agency was one of the most unique free agencies I think we've had in a while because he's without a doubt not the top quarterback that you could acquire on your team via trade or via draft or via free agency. At the same time, I had a huge belief that if the right team secured him for the right price, then yeah, I think he could be your quarterback in a very pivotal playoff game, in an NFC or AFC championship game, or even a Super Bowl, depending on how much you pay him and depending on his supporting cast. That's the most important part. Again, I believe there are two types of quarterbacks in the NFL. There are quarterbacks that could single-handedly carry you to the Super Bowl, which the only active one that I could think of currently is Patrick Mahomes. And then there are quarterbacks that if you surround them with the right pieces and put them in the right situation, then they could get you there as well. And I actually believe Derek Carr is one of those quarterbacks. I think Dak Prescott's one of those quarterbacks. And like we saw this past season, if you throw Dak Prescott, for instance, in a situation where his only main weapons are CeeDee Lamb and Tony Pollard happens to get injured in their final game of the season in the NFC divisional, then obviously Dak Prescott is going to be handicapped a little bit and you're going to lose the game. I view Derek Carr in a similar light in this situation. But what was really interesting about Derek Carr's situation is last year, after a remarkable season for the Las Vegas Raiders, a very courageous one, bear in mind, one that made the Raiders organization look like absolute dog shit. I mean, starting from the John Gruden emails, continuing with the Henry Ruggs tragedy, and then at the very end of it, you had Damon Arnett deciding to do this.
Pull up, lame ass. I swear to God, I will kill you, nigga. On everything I love, I will kill you, nigga.
And through it all, behind your special teams coach, Rich Bisaccia, and rallying behind your quarterback, Derek Carr, who, by the way, said the right thing in almost every single interview. When John Gruden had to step down, Derek Carr said this.
So it wasn't me, but I still feel the pain because I love that man so much. At some point, hopefully people forgive him.
You want there to be some healing. You want him to be welcomed back at some point.
And I don't know at what capacity that is, but right. Just so he can live life, you know?
And when Henry Ruggs had his incident, Derek Carr said this.
Did I not let him know that he really could, I'd be there for him at 3 a.m. I want to be better, He needs people to love him right now. He's probably feeling a certain type of way about himself right now, and he needs to be loved. And if no one else will do it, I'll do it.
Needless to say, Derek Carr wasn't necessarily the greatest quarterback in the NFL, but for the time that the Las Vegas Raiders went through in the 2021 NFL season, he said all the right things. He got all the teammates to rally around him, and as a result, the Las Vegas Raiders were able to make it to the playoffs. They didn't end up extending Rich Bisaccia. They just brought in a brand new head coach for Derek Carr to work with. So bear in mind, this was going to be his 6th head coach and his 4th offensive coordinator in his entire career. They also really went the extra mile to show how much they love Derek Carr. I mean, they signed him to a contract extension and they gave him a no trade clause. Bear in mind, this was less than a year ago, and the man was starting throughout the regular season. He reunited with his old college buddy, Devontae Adams. These two loved each other. It was a really cute story. And of course, Derek Carr was benched with 2 games left in the regular season. And this is where things get really comical. Las Vegas Raiders played their hand. They said to everybody, we're done with Derek Carr. They didn't even keep it a secret. They wanted it to be out there in the public. With 2 games left in the season, we're done with Derek Carr. I'm pretty confident that they could have traded Derek Carr to any destination they wanted to and got like a 3rd round pick out of him. But whenever you're extending a quarterback the offseason prior and he was your franchise QB throughout all this time, and then you're so confident that you're going to keep him, bear in mind for the next 3 years, by the way, it's not even that long, that you're willing to give him a no trade clause. It's just nothing indicates ineptitude towards a franchise more than that. I know Derek Carr may not have been the most talented. I know it might be time for a brand new QB, but you have to admit, he was the Raiders' most successful quarterback since the days of Rich Gannon. The fact that Raider fans are so willing to jump out into quarterback purgatory once again, I think it's a little interesting, but I hope it works out for you. There's a great upcoming draft class. We saw what Anthony Richardson did at the draft combine, and it was absolutely insane. But the ending of Derek Carr's tenure in Las Vegas was unfortunate. I think he should have been honored a little bit more than he did. Once that was put behind us, there was a question about where he's going to go next. And the off-season circus surrounding Derek Carr was even more comical than the regular season circus surrounding Derek Carr. So Derek Carr would begin his free agency tour, and the very first team he would visit with is the New Orleans Saints. I thought this was a perfect fit because he has familiarity with Dennis Allen. Derek Carr's first head coach when he entered the NFL in his rookie year was Dennis Allen, although he didn't finish out the season. But on top of that, if you look at the New Orleans Saints, the only thing that they were really missing was a quarterback, at least an above average quarterback. They were trying to find one of those in Jameis Winston, but it's a combination of that and the fact that their best wide receiver, Michael Thomas, has had health issues throughout his entire career. That aside, their offensive line's remarkable. Their defense is incredibly underrated, and we actually tend to forget about them quite consistently because, well, their offense can't really capitalize upon how successful their defense is. And above all of that, they are kind of in salary cap hell right now. But in addition to that was probably the most comical team in all of free agency, and that's the New York Jets. The New York Jets are in a very unique situation here because as a result of winning one game way too many during the 2020 NFL season, they ended up selecting number 2 in the 2021 NFL draft, which means instead of getting Trevor Lawrence, they drafted Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson turned out to be a bit too difficult of a project for the New York Jets, and unfortunately for Zach Wilson, the Jets seem to have hit on all of their picks aside from him, especially in this past NFL draft, drafting Sauce Gardner with their first round pick and drafting Garrett Wilson with their second first-round pick. And that's before we get into their next offensive hit later on in the draft, Breece Hall. And this is already being added to a very suffocating defense and an offense that has tons of potential. I don't think Elijah Moore is a bad football player by any means. I don't necessarily know what the case is with Denzel Mims, but those two were both second-round picks as wide receivers. So one would think if you have 4 wide receivers on your team, 2 being first-round picks in Corey Davis and Garrett Wilson, and the other 2 being second-round picks, and you have a quarterback that's a number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft following Trevor Lawrence, who is getting compared to Patrick Mahomes coming out of the pre-draft process just because of this particular throw, alongside with a very suffocating defense, you would think that the Jets could at least make some sort of push into the playoff picture. And in the very beginning of the season, it looked like that would be the case, but that's not what ended up happening, was it? No. Unfortunately, Zach Wilson's miscues became way too public, and it resulted in a lack of teammate chemistry in the locker room. The entire team was cheering for Mike White to be the starter, and they had more success when Mike White was the starter. And this resulted in the New York Jets coming to one conclusion: they are one quarterback away from greatness. And it seemed like their top selection for a quarterback was going to be Aaron Rodgers. There's a problem with that. Aaron Rodgers is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's also one of the most most volatile personalities in the NFL. I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but you're putting a lot of eggs in the "I hope Aaron Rodgers picks us" basket. And historically, he's had a reputation for making decisions that on paper don't seem to make a lot of sense. One of them was returning to the Green Bay Packers after last offseason. Bear in mind, this is after the previous offseasons being a complete circus about him wanting to leave the Green Bay Packers. The Denver Broncos went all in on Aaron Rodgers. They hired a good friend of his, Nathaniel Hackett. They cleared up a bunch of salary cap space. They had draft picks to offer. And alas, Aaron Rodgers decided to return to the Green Bay Packers, even though Devontae Adams left, even though his chances of winning with the Green Bay Packers were slightly reduced from the year prior. And this is where it gets interesting, because the New York Jets actually hosted Derek Carr for a free agency visit. And as a matter of fact, it went really well. This is what David Carr, Derek Carr's brother, former #1 overall pick in the 2002 NFL draft, had to say about it.
It's not going to be in a situation where he just gets on a plane to go have fun in New York, which as much as we would love to do that. Yeah, Derek had a great trip. So he went there to get a feel for how they work. He's fantastic, and they hit it off, and they would love to work together. And they had a good chat. They talked about a lot of different things.
But you know what's the funniest part of this entire situation? It was blatantly obvious to everybody that was an NFL fan that Derek Carr was nothing else than the New York Jets' glorified side piece. They brought in Derek Carr. They told him that they believe he could be a Hall of Famer, which I think Derek Carr is a good football player. I don't think he's the best. I think he's above average. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, even if he wins a Super Bowl for the New York Jets. I mean, think of it this way. Is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer? It depends. If you perceive Matthew Stafford as a Hall of Famer, then we could have a different conversation. But even if Derek Carr wins a Super Bowl with the New York Jets, I still think his resume is a little bit less than Matthew Stafford's. And a lot of people don't think Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer. So it really depends on your perception on who deserves to make it into the Hall of Fame. But that's still a very wild thing to say. But it is definitely something you say to a human being that isn't feeling so good about themselves after they get cast away by the only franchise they know that they've said repeatedly that they want to play for the entirety of their career, no matter how dysfunctional it is. It seems like the New York Jets officially put all of their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket, and it seems like the New Orleans Saints finally got their man. And I honestly think they deserve this man, because according to Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport and almost every single major source in football, this morning we got a report that Derek Carr has officially agreed to a contract with the New Orleans Saints. And so the Saints are giving Derek Carr a 4-year deal. A huge QB number is coming, and they'll make it work with their cap situation. If there's anything I could say about the New Orleans Saints, it's historically they've always been really good at manipulating the salary cap. Now, a lot of people are wondering, Mike, how much is Derek Carr going to get signed for? Well, honestly, I think it's a great number for a player of his caliber. Derek Carr has agreed to a 4-year deal for $150 million with $100 million in total guarantees. This is per Ian Rappaport and Mikerophone. He gets $70 million effectively guaranteed, $60 million at signing, another $10 million in year 3 vesting after year 1. Carr structures his deal to accommodate the New Orleans Saints cap issues. Now, here's the most comical part of this whole situation to me. According to Mikerophone, Derek Carr also receives a no-trade clause from the New Orleans Saints as part of his new contract. The same one as he had with the Raiders, which allowed him to control his future and his free agent process. I have a good feeling that the Saints aren't going to just cut Derek Carr loose after a year. I think this is a good contract for a player like Derek Carr. I really have respect for players like Derek Carr. I mean, if you go to the top paid quarterbacks in the NFL, at this point, I hope you guys know the top 4 by heart, because I feel like I bring this up a lot during the offseason. But the top 4 in terms of cap hit this year is going to be Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, and Ryan Tannehill. These are their respective cap hits. But if you want to go in terms of overall salary, you guys already know the highest paid quarterback in the NFL is Aaron Rodgers, then Russell Wilson, then Kyler Murray, and Deshaun Watson. All of these quarterbacks did not make it to the playoffs this year. They all have a legitimate reason for not making it to the playoffs this year. Aaron Rodgers had a significantly weaker supporting cast. Russell Wilson, I honestly can't make an excuse for him. I guess the coaching didn't work out. Kyler Murray got injured. Deshaun Watson didn't play for a large majority of the season. This contract puts Derek Carr in between Matthew Stafford and Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins. I mean, it's a slight little pay decrease for him, but you have to understand, he's signing the 9th highest paid contract for a quarterback now. He's doing this before Lamar Jackson gets a contract. He's doing this before Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow sign a contract extension. So this is monumental for the New Orleans Saints. This is a remarkable value for a quarterback of Derek Carr's caliber, and this indicates that Derek Carr is hunting for one thing and one thing only. At this point, yes, I know this is going to sound absurd to some people, but this man wants to win a Super Bowl. And to be honest, according to my philosophy in regards to the salary cap with quarterbacks getting these huge contracts, I think he actually put himself in a remarkable position to potentially pursue a Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying it's a guaranteed thing that the Saints are going to win a Super Bowl now that they got Derek Carr, but I've seen a lot of moves throughout the offseason where I look at the situation and I say, okay, this team completely squandered their opportunity to win a Super Bowl. In the case of Derek Carr, he's signing a below market quarterback contract. I know you're looking at $37.5 million and saying, oh my God, that's a lot of money. But if you compare it to other quarterbacks, especially when there's a lot more quarterbacks that need to get contract extensions. I didn't even bring up Jalen Hurts. Tua is eventually going to need to have a crazy contract extension. Jalen Hurts might reset the QB market, bear in mind. I think Derek Carr did a remarkable job in this particular situation. By the end of his contract, he should make about $285 million throughout the entirety of his career. That's very, very respectable. He's made $135 million so far in his career. This money indicates that Derek Carr wants one thing and one thing only, and that's a Super Bowl. I think the Saints actually have the means to make this happen, believe it or not. Now look, it could definitely blow up in their face, but if it does blow up in their face, I don't think it's a situation where you're screwing over your team for the rest of his career. At the very minimum, Derek Carr is a high-end bridge quarterback that'll keep this team competitive throughout the next couple of years. I mean, just looking at this team, man, they have Derek Carr, they have Alvin Kamara, they have Michael Thomas. When he's injured, he's pretty damn good. Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry has kind of fallen off a little bit. Juwan Johnson has proven to be a great tight end. Their offensive line is pretty solid. And then you look at their defense, man, you still have Cam Jordan. Marcus Davenport has been very good recently as well. You have Marcus May, Marshawn Lattimore, maybe Tyrann Mathieu could turn it up this upcoming season. I actually feel good about this team, especially considering how weak their division is going to be this upcoming season. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this. I personally think it's a home run contract for the New Orleans Saints. And at the same time, I think the New York Jets are a little screwed because they're putting all their eggs in the Aaron Rodgers basket. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.